Hello, I'm Jerry Fort. I'm going to read a story out of this book here called The Scary States of America, 50 Weird and Terrifying Stories, one from each state based on true events. This is by the author Michael Teitelbaum. And the state I'm going to read here is Idaho. So let's see what happened in Idaho. That's kind of weird. A cry in the night. You know, I've heard many weird cries in the night. Ends up being cats. Like cats in the neighborhood fighting or something like that. Usually, because sometimes they sound like babies. I don't know if that's the kind of cry they're talking about here, but sometimes it'll freak you out. Okay, it starts off. Do you believe me? If I had $1 for every time I read that in an email, I'd be one rich guy. I don't believe every story I get. I'm not naive. There are a lot of people pulling pranks out there, and some ghost stories are just that, stories. But sometimes I get a message from someone who so desperately wants to be believed. I just know they're telling the truth. Too bad for Barbara in Boise that I seem to be the only person who feels that way. Subject. Believe me? Question mark. Okay, here's how it goes. Jason, I need someone to believe me. I wish I didn't see what I saw, but I did. And now I have no home. Will you listen to my story and not judge me? Barbara, I wrote, that she signed Barbara, okay. I wrote her back and told her that I'm not a judge, just a collector of the paranormal. Here's what she wrote back. Thanks for getting back to me and offering to hear my story. I'm 13 and my name's Barbara Moulton. I hope you believe me. My parents sure don't. That's why I'm living with my friend Madison and her family. That and the fact that I will not go back to that house, no matter what anyone says. I hate thinking about it. From the day my family moved into the 110-year-old farmhouse, I felt there was something weird about the place. I always had the feeling that I was being watched. I hated going upstairs. I just knew that someone or something was up there. My parents told me it was just my imagination. I was only 11 when we moved in, but I knew that something wasn't right. Then things started going missing from my room. The weird thing was that my stuff, my clothes, hairbrushes, dolls, and other toys wasn't touched. What was taken were things I had for my dolls, baby bottles, clothes, tiny combs and brushes, even a small crib where I kept my favorite doll. The doll wasn't taken, just the crib, and the tiny quilt that was in the crib, and the other baby-sized stuff. Then, one night about a year after we moved in, I heard a noise that woke me up from a sound sleep. At first, it sounded like a soft sobbing, but as I lay awake, my mind racing. I clearly heard the sound of a baby crying. I jumped from my bed and ran along the upstairs hallway. The sound seemed to be coming from somewhere in the hall, but it also felt like I was surrounded by it. My whole body was overcome by grief, which I couldn't explain. I started to weep, sitting right there on the hallway floor, a huge weight of sadness pressing on my shoulders. Forcing myself to stand, I ran into my parents' room and woke them. But by the time we all stepped back out into the hall, the crying had stopped. They told me I had a bad dream and sent me back to bed. But the same thing happened again the next night and the night after that. After a while, I stopped waking up my parents. They had started to become pretty upset with me and thought I was turning into the girl who cried wolf. So I'd stay in bed listening to the baby crying, panicked and wondering if I was going crazy or if there was really something out there. A few months ago, I made the discovery. My parents had been renovating one part of the house or another since the day we moved in. Renovating one part of the house or another since the day we moved in. Okay. At this point, they were working on the upstairs hallway, scraping off layers and layers of old wallpaper. One day, when I was home alone, I happened to notice that several layers of wallpaper had been scraped from the center of the hallway wall, but it looked like one more layer remained. The corner had been started on the last layer, and I just couldn't resist reaching up, grabbing it, and pulling it away from the wall. I wish now that I never had. I tore away the final layer of wallpaper, and what I saw left me standing there in total shock. Hidden under layers of wallpaper was a door. I was so curious, but I was also totally scared. Finally, though, I ripped away the remaining pieces of paper to fully expose the door. Why would someone hide a door behind wallpaper? To make it seem as if the door never existed, I wondered. No, sorry, that's a question mark. That's a question. To make it seem as if the door never existed, I wondered. And more important, what was behind that door? Oh, I'd have to go in. I would have to, because I'm a seeker. I want to know things. I want to discover things. I gotta go in those kind of places because my curiosity is just so. I'd probably get in trouble. That's what probably get me in trouble. But I'm like a cat. Curiosity, you know. The door had no doorknob, so it could remain flat and hidden. I pushed on the door, but it was locked. It was making me crazy. I had to know what was behind that door. Racing to my father's tool cabinet, I grabbed a screwdriver. Slowly, I unscrewed the hinges. Then I yanked the door open to reveal a small room. I stepped halfway inside the room, and a rush of freezing air poured through the door. My chest got tight, and I couldn't take a full breath. My fingers stiffened and immediately started to turn blue. I felt lightheaded, like I was about to faint. I stumbled back into the hallway, and all the weird sensations went away. I should have run, but some part of me still had to go to the bottom of this mystery. Had to get to the bottom of this mystery. I took a deep breath and then stepped all the way into the room. Brave little girl. No freezing air. I looked around uncertainly and saw a very old crib, some old toys, and rolls of wallpaper patterned with cartoon animals. It was definitely the kind of wallpaper that someone would use in a baby's room. My heart almost stopped when I looked in the corner of the windowless room. My stuff! What the heck? I said out loud. How could these things end up in a locked room, sealed behind 100 years of wallpaper? Then I noticed a large metal box on the floor next to the crib. My heart beat faster as I slowly opened the box, its rusty hinges creaking ominously. Inside, I found a baby's bonnet, a pair of handmade baby shoes, and a lace christening gown. I pulled a yellowed newspaper clipping out from the folds of the gown. Looking closely, I realized that it was an obituary for a baby. Her name was Elizabeth McIntosh. She had lived for only 3 months in the year 1915 and had been sick for her entire short life. The address listed in the clipping was my address. The freezing air returned as I set down the clipping. This time it gripped me like an icy claw. My whole body shivered violently. I fell to my knees and started crying. Then my throat began to close. I gasped for breath. In a last desperate attempt to live, I flung myself out of the room and lay sprawled on the hallway floor. Excuse me. My breath returned, and the chills passed. Then the truth of what happened came into sharp focus. This was to have been baby Elizabeth's room, but she never lived to see it completed. The family must have suffered such sadness that they couldn't bear to see the room. So they sealed the door behind the wallpaper and boarded up the window from the inside. No evidence that a window had ever existed remained on the outside either. But someone or something, maybe it was the ghost of Elizabeth herself, still wanted to prepare the room for a baby. Scrambling to my feet, I ran downstairs and stepped outside. I glanced back at the house, looking up at the spot where the room would have been. I saw a window where the day before there hadn't been one. Now there is one. In the window, I saw a woman dressed in old-fashioned clothes, crying and holding a motionless baby in her arms. I kept running and haven't been back to the house since. My folks are upset. They don't believe me. They said I should stay with my friend until I stop lying and want to come home. What kills me is that they know the room is there. They just don't believe that I heard the baby or got the chills when I went into the room. Why don't they... Now, if I was a parent, I would test her theory. The room's not covered up yet. You know, the door's still there. They saw it. Why don't they go in and see if they get the same feeling? They didn't say that they went in to check it out. If I was a parent, I'd go in there and just see what it's, you know, so that I can say to her, well, I went in there and it didn't happen to me. But they're not even giving it a chance, you know. They say I made up seeing the woman with the dead baby. They even say I put my doll things in there myself. I hate that house. The McIntoshes lost their little girl when they lived there, and now my parents don't even realize they're losing their own daughter too. You do believe me, Jason, don't you? There you go. That's pretty wild. I've always been an adventurer. I like going in old places. Years ago, over 30 years ago, my little brother came to visit us from, I think he was living in California with my folks at the time, and he came to visit us in Oklahoma. And there was an old hotel, just single floor, just one floor hotel up the street in a little bit of a business area type place, but it'd been closed down for many, many years. And the door, I could see from afar that the door was always kind of open a little bit. And my little brother and I told him, let's go up there and let's check it out, you know. We had to watch out for bums because our area is full of bums. It's like bum land. So we went. We had a flashlight just in case it was dark in there. Opened it up slowly, looking around, making sure there wasn't no violent bums in there, and just kind of was walking around. We'd go to each room, look in there. There was stuff in there, just stuff that probably when they closed it down was left in there. Maybe they got it out of storage and threw it in all the rooms. I don't know, but it could have been accumulation from bums too. But we just kind of looked around, and it had been, you know, the place had been damaged really bad in there from what's the word? It wasn't just graffiti. They were destroying things in there. So we just kind of walked around, looked around. It was kind of creepy, you know, just dusty, dirty, just full of stuff in there on the floor. But it was just neat. It was just a neat place to check out. See, back then, I think I was still collecting matchbooks, and I was looking for matchbooks. because old hotels, you know, gas stations, grocery stores, all those places, they all had their own matchbook that said like the name of the place on it. So I was looking for those. They didn't have any in there. As much as I looked, they probably used them. You know, the bums probably found them and used them, you know, for to keep warm. You know, lit some clothes on fire in there or something. I don't know. Fire department would have called for sure. But so it was just a neat feeling to go in somewhere that, you know, back then it was like 1987, 88, maybe somewhere around there. So even before then, you know, 100 years, maybe not that long, 50 years maybe, that place may have been a thriving hotel, you know, but not anymore. You know, it was sad. They tore it down now, but it was. I wish I would have took pictures back then. I didn't have a, you know, camera phone or anything I could do a video or anything with. So of course they didn't have camera phones back then, but it would have been cool that could have videoed it. But I like old houses. I'd like to go and venture into old houses and just kind of look around. It's just cool. It's a cool feeling just thinking that this was new one time, and it was probably just a beautiful place. I mean, they built them really good back in them days, and I just like to see the, you know, the structure design that they used back then and stuff, and it's just really cool. Okay, so Idaho, A Cry in the Night. I thank you all for watching. I appreciate it. If you're into the paranormal type stuff, get you a copy of this book. Michael Teitelbaum would appreciate it. This is the Scary States of America. Thanks for watching. See you on the next one.